General family viewing.
Hello viewer, welcome to Chungu cha Jamii. My name is Betty Akuku. I am your host today and I am going to be discussing with you COVID-19 lessons. I am joined by gentlemen whom I will allow to introduce themselves and then we will take up this discussion. I will start with the one on my right.
I'm Joshua Adegoke, an apostle to the youth across the nations of Africa.
Okay, welcome Joshua.
Thank you.
Francis Ketenji Lyungo, a director at Restoration Education Center in Kawangware, Fort 6.
And I am Silas Grinya. I'm a counseling psychologist and CEO of Amazon Counseling Center.
Wow. Welcome, gentlemen. Good to have you for this discussion. We are yet to talk about COVID-19 lessons. This is part 2 of the discussion we have had previously. And now looking at all the things that did happen, I know for sure that we picked a lot of things. We have now braced ourselves to face whatever it is that comes. And like I mentioned, this may not just be the only pandemic that has found us alive. You know, we may have 1 or 2 more, pandemics that will find us. And not just COVID-19, many things happen to life and we never know how to handle, we never know how to deal. We are always caught off guard a lot of times. Now, talking about COVID, I would like to know first from the church. There's this time the church was really pushing for reopening. There were back and forths with the government of Kenya. Why did they want the church to be reopened, other than just members being used to, gathering together and meeting together and having fellowship together physically and then going back? What other reason was there for the church to really push for their meeting?
Basically, we were pushing for the reopening of the church simply because under the spiritual law that is above all laws, including the government's law, that we should forbid not the gathering of the brethren. That is the coming together of the believers. It is something that God endorsed. And when it comes to this period where the government or the pandemic was trying to shut this, the spiritual fathers or the church fathers were standing on the mandate of the church that we should come together in worship and adoration of Christ. So all that we're pushing for was majorly because of this gathering.
Okay, because the schools were also closed, and it's understandable why people were pushing for reopening, because learning was not going on. One of the things that I really feel bad about is the fact that much as people went ahead to come up with a new way of continuing learning, and that was online learning, it sounds really bad that this was rubbished. Was this taken into consideration? Did the students move forward to the next level with the online classes that they were able to have?
What I would say, Betty, I wouldn't say that it was lavished. I would say maybe we were not ready for a new invention in our learning.
Okay.
And I think that is one of the lessons we need to learn in terms of COVID-19. We have known learning to be in school, in classes, and per year. In fact, sorry to say about it, our learning is all about the years you've been in school. And so and mostly from the private sector, we came in and we said, why not go online learning? It was not received as though it would still be as effective as it was. But for those who did the online learning and the schools which undertook the online learning, if you went to those schools and you met those pupils, you realize that the learning was as effective as it ought to be. So we need to reinvent our wheel in terms of what learning is all about. Does it mean it has to be within the 4 corners of a class? Does it mean it has to be from January to December, or even if you say from September to August? Is it really when learning has to
taking
take
place.
place. Yes.
Yes, yes. Silas, talking about relationships and businesses and just life in general, you know, there were so many adjustments that people had to make in their lives. What lessons did you come across? Did people bring to your attention? Did COVID bring to your table?
Okay, apart from even before I talk about other people, even for us psychologists
Yes.
who are having face-to-face sessions, I think that transition was very difficult for us because some of us we were used to where you have to meet the client physically, and even our training the way it is, it never considers like online and all that. But of course, lucky enough, some of us had begun online before, like myself, because I support some organizations that are of international kind of nature. So I would do a training for people who are in their field work. So someone is in Kuwait, another person is in Mexico, another person in wherever they are, but they are able to access some gadgets that we could use, technology, and then we are able to do a session with them. So that was not difficult for me to transition as a person. But then at the same time, I think it has kind of confirmed that what it is that I was doing before is actually something that has been very effective and can be very effective moving forward. Now, having said that, what I've noticed with many people is that people have realized that they have a capacity to be resilient more than they thought. That's one of the key lessons. Number two, people now have gotten into a point of being very mindful, as in you're so conscious about what is taking place right now. For example, in terms of relationships, there are people who are locked out and they are wherever they are, like for a very long period. And so you want to talk to your loved ones, but the only thing you can use maybe is your phone and nothing else. Like you can't really reach out to them and be with them, help them, love them, and whatever else. So what people are doing now, the little moment they get to be together, even if it's an hour, they utilize that fully.
They maximize.
They maximize that. So people have realized that they have to be very intentional in their relationship. Another lesson that people are learning is also that having time together, especially those who are under thriving relationships, having time together is really very essential for the growth of relationships. And so what they are doing now, they are purposing much more to actually be together, even if there is, we have been opened and so we can run wherever we want to go and all that. Although I know there are countries that probably we are not able to travel as we would want to sneak in, sneak out and whatever. So it's not possible to do that. But however, people have become very intentional in meetings, very intentional in having that conversation. We call it a conversational presence. Because I think even in your experience, there are times you talk to someone and is looking at you, but doesn't hear what you're saying because they are not here.
True.
Or some other times, they want you to be done with the talking so that they can answer. But now you realize this time round, you don't have an opportunity to meet someone. And so the very little moment that you get to be with them, you intentionally be there. Even in businesses, you become now more intentional in everything you're doing. And even pastoring, you become more intentional in what you're doing. So you're in touch with everything, such that if there are some gaps or some loopholes along the way, you're able to notice them because you're present to yourself and to the other person. So these are some of the key things that I think people have learned. The other way I think in terms of businesses, what I've noticed is that people now are also exploring, other than just being narrowly focused on one particular career or business, whatever, people now are kind of spreading and focusing on other things. And so one way maybe is to be able to sustain their lives. But also another way, there are people who are taking advantage of the normal situation that we are talking about, okay, which of course ordinarily would say is abnormal, but the normal situation, there are those who are hijacking that opportunity for them to be able to stabilize maybe their businesses, to explore new ways, to start new technology or whatever it is that is happening. So there are people having that as a gap, like what we call in research a problem. So they have seen that as a problem and they need to come in and fill that gap. So for them, it's not like really we lack, for them, they are looking at it like an opportunity to be able to use more of their potential.
It's an
So these are
eye-opener
some
to
of the lessons
diversify,
that
yeah.
people have actually learned along the way. But also another thing that people have learned is consistency.
Yeah.
Because now when you get in that room, you've lost your job and you can't wake up in the morning and go to work, you sleep like the whole day. And then when you wake up, you're feeling bored, you try to sleep at night, you can't. So people learned how to have a routine, which created consistency. And so as they go back to normal life, they are using that ability of being consistent. And when you become consistency, things like, for example, boredom, things like uncertainty, things like what people would call procrastination is not there because you have already been intentionally.
You're into routine.
Yes, so you're able to create that routine.
Yeah.
And so when you go back to the normal life, you're actually going on with what already you had created along the way. So these are some of the very important lessons that actually people ought to have been aware long before.
I know.
But then because of the situation, maybe we didn't know that, but this is the time we are realizing that, and it's important for us.
The situation was good. At least it got us to the place of learning new stuff. Apostle Joshua,
Yes, please.
what are the lessons that the church has learned at this time?
Okay, when we say the church, I believe we're talking about you and I,
Yes.
because the church is the believers coming together.
Okay.
Actually, people don't realize that meaning. The church, which means ecclesia, that's when believer comes together, not just the physical building, that's the church. So generally, large things that I believe COVID has brought upon all of us is many of us now begin to see life, as a privilege more than a right. Before COVID, you used to think it's right. Everybody you just brag about it. But having seen what has hit the world, what has hit all of us, you now begin to realize that it is a privilege. So to an extent, it has made all of us to become more grateful and thankful than ever before. If you look at the statistics of people who have been affected by this COVID-19 cases, recorded death and all of that, across the globe. And you have your parents breathing. You have your husband still breathing. You have your son still alive. It makes you to be more thankful.
True.
This has never been a way of human initially. Even the top, the rich, the big, the so-called, the mighty, they've humbled themselves to now see that this is a privilege, not a right.
Wow, it's not a right. Francis, what lessons have the schools learned? What lessons? Talking about parents, the students, and even you as school directors and school owners.
Okay, like I had already said, one of the major things we have learned is that we need to envision ourselves in a scenario where we are not able to physically be in class.
Yes.
What happens? Does learning stop or learning can continue? Secondly, and because schools involve the owners of the schools and the teachers and the other subordinate staff, we need also to envision a situation where, is it now COVID-19 came, jobs were lost, incomes were lost. Suppose in another 2 years, we find ourselves in a situation like we were in 2020. Does it mean then we are going to lose our jobs again, our income, and we are stuck again until that problem is over? So we need to reinvent ourselves and look at how can we come up with systems which would assure that even in the event of the loss of income, we can turn to other forms of, or other trust or other things around which we have come up with as support within a time of crisis, whereby possibly a teacher may not be in class and earning, but maybe within a period of time, they have come up like a group and they own a rent or place somewhere where now the income from that particular rent is able to sustain them. Or possibly as a director, I've moved my eyes not necessarily from the school, but I've thought about beginning a pawpaw farming somewhere in Ukambani, whereby because you realize that the seasons did not change.
Yeah.
The rains were there, the sunshine was there, the food in the shambas was there. So I can go back to the shamba, and as I wait for these other things to come up, we are doing something. So I think is focusing our mind not necessarily to what I am doing today, and asking yourself, if I stop doing what I'm doing today, what would happen?
In other words, having a mind of a plan B.
Okay, like people always call it a plan B.
Yes.
It may be even be a plan C or plan, but if I stopped doing, if I came out of class today,
Do I have something to
does
go
it mean
into?
my life has come to an end? You see, I remember a story which was in the paper. There's a guy who, during this COVID-19 time, he embarked into doing taxi business.
Yeah.
And he says the money he got in a single day is money he could never get even in his employment. Being innovative. We need to innovate ourselves in terms of learning. The government needs to come back and say, as much as we may not be able to be physically in school, but we need to come up with a system where learning still continues.
I hope and wish we can actually get to that place so that even if you're only 5 or 10 parents
Yes.
who have come together in such agreement and say, can our children continue learning? Can the government be supportive enough to allow them run the curriculum and have them be able to transition to the next
To
level?
the next level.
You know?
Even the examining bodies, because you see also one of the legit things about our learning system is we only have a single examination body. Let me give you a good example. If today you began doing the accounts learning,
Yeah.
you want to become an accountant. The Institute of Certified Public Accountants doesn't care where you go to school to. Doesn't
No,
care
no,
what
no,
what
it
kind
doesn't.
of college you attend.
Yeah.
They only make sure they have an
Examined.
examination for you, and they determine the examination center you go to see that particular examination,
Yes,
and many
yes.
other professional bodies.
Yes.
So we need to bring our learning because we are talking about progressing.
I hope that such things are already in course.
We are progressing, unless if we are saying we no longer have geniuses.
No, we do.
Is there a possibility a class 6 pupil can go and sit a class 8 examination and pass?
There should be such
You
provisions.
see,
Yeah.
but when we only put
Limits.
it towards it has to be 2020, 2021, then 2023, the system becomes so rigid. And I can tell you, as much as we have gone back to school, there are many other issues which are not which are unsettled, and mostly in learners, both in primary schools, in secondary schools, in colleges. And to my surprise, it's like this thing also caught all of us, even up to the universities,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
a
yeah.
surprise,
It
because
did.
you'd expect that in the universities
They would carry on.
There's something years back which was known as distance learning, which meant that you don't necessarily have to go to class. You can learn from wherever you are.
Yes.
So we need to reinvent our learning system to accommodate any situation that no matter what element we are in, learning still continues.
Very important. Silas, look at the families that have trained and grown their children in such a way that they get whatever they want whenever. And so our restaurants were shut down, and children would not go for swimming, they would not go for parties, and all these things were inaccessible. And there are those parents who are so rigid that they still insisted on training and bringing up their children a particular way. What lessons do you think they have learned, or should they learn this time that there was very little income and you were using whatever you have to ensure that it could take you a whole week? You know, people have been living carelessly or just living. You know, you spend however you want because you know that tomorrow you will still have. And so people just live, people just spend. What lessons have these families learned?
One, I would say it is bad parenting
Okay.
to give to your children whatever it is they ask. Because life itself does not give you me
Whatever you
everything we want.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if that happens, then in this time of pandemic, we would say we don't want this COVID. And so we want to continue with our normal life. So we know very well life is not that way. So why would you train your children, let's say, for example, like military people? Why are you going to train them as navies and you know very well there is no water in your ground, like in your country, and maybe also at the same time, they are not going to engage in war in countries where there is water. So if you train them in water and then you take them to land to live there and to guard there, they will not manage their work. So the same way even with the spiritual leaders, you know, when you train your Christians, you don't train them to live in an environment where they are acceptable. You also train them, you empower them in such a way that even when they realize they can't make it, they are able to say, for example, everything works for our good. Or they are able to say, the one who is in me is greater than the one who is in the world. So that means they are facing the world the way it is, you know, knowing that they can face it and defeat whatever it is that is happening because they have been well prepared. Now, when you bring up children that way, giving them everything, the problem is they do not know the word no. And word no is very, very essential in life. There are situations you need to say no, and there are situations you're told no. Now, if you're used to yes, 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 and you're told no, you interpret that as rejection. And when you interpret that as rejection, that as a child, or even as a grown-up person now, it becomes very difficult for you to actually navigate through different stages in life. You get into a relationship, your partner, you tell them, take me out, and they say, today I have an exam coming. That you don't take that. Because for you, you're used to whatever it is, you ask, you get it. Now, again, what if parents die, or they grow up, or they don't have money anymore later on to support you? So what happens with that child? Does not have resilience. Because they have never bounced back. Whatever it is they ask, they get it immediately, in their terms. So as a parent, during this period, it's good, first of all, to settle down and maybe review your budget. That's the first thing. Understand how much are you getting, what is coming in. Then review the budget. Now, once you review the budget, sit down with the children. You understand them depending on their developmental mileage. So talk to them, let them understand what is happening right now. Let them know that they will not lack food, for example, but they may not be able to get every other kind of food they were getting before. Now we're going to prepare one meal, and that is what we're going to take, all of us. And I know you like meat, I know you like a pizza, you like this other thing, but because of the situation, we are going to share from one table, one pool. And that is what we have at the moment. So you have that conversation with them so that they also do not interpret, because you have drastically changed things, like you reject them, you don't love them, you don't care, you don't listen, and all these other things. And then from there, because they have not developed skills to know how to deal with uncertainties, they are likely now to start coping in a negative way. So when you sit them down and they are able to understand what is happening, they will actually, sometimes you can ask them, how do you think we can generate money? And some of the children may say, maybe you're giving us every month, you're giving us 1,000. So why can't we then contribute to the family 300 out of that, so that, you know, they are already contributing to the family. And they're able to understand what is happening. So that is essential. Now, the other thing, if you have been providing your children with everything they ask, the moment you stop providing to them, what will happen is they will have ups and downs that in normal life, there is what we call orientation, disorientation. So orientation is when things are going normal. Disorientation is when they are a little bit abnormal. But now, when there is disorientation, disorientation, and then there is a very deep disorientation, they don't know how to come back. Okay? So in between here, many things can happen. So what you need to do is, at this moment that you're adjust in I don't know how to put it, in a way that is progressive, as in slowly by slowly. You don't have just to say, for example, today, from today onwards, no bread, no this, no this, no. So what remains, maybe is githeri or something else. So children will not understand, because they are acclimatizing. How do they start now taking arrowroot? They were used to bread, so how do they start taking these other things?
So you need to give an explanation.
Yes, give an explanation, but also being gradual in the way you implement it. So you don't just come drastically and change everything. Yeah, so those are some of the things that I can, maybe for such parents, but clearly it is wrong parenting to do that.
It's very wrong.
And again, it's important to know what parenting style are you using, because they are key for parenting styles. So which one of those are you using? Because, for example, if you're authoritarian, then what is happening is that you are democratic. You're there with your children. You're able to have a conversation and make rules together.
Yeah.
And if someone breaks the rule of the family, for example, let's say we want to minimize on use of power. So in this case, we will not be watching TV from this time to the other time. Okay, so if you come and find your child sitting there, so what kind of parenting are you going to use? Now, if you use a scale, for example, like democracy, which is now found in the authoritarian, authoritarian. So you sit down with a child, and then you are having that conversation, and you let them know the reason why I told you not to do this is because of this and that. Okay. So then after that, if you're using, there are other styles, like for example, authoritative, where you come now and shout. There is another one which is neglecting. So you don't care. Whatever it is the child is doing,
when power is
it's
finished,
okay.
will stay in
Because if I tell
blackouts.
you to stop, you'll say I reject you. And then you'll be depressed. And I don't want you to commit suicide. So as a parent, I just neglect you. There is another one who is passive. Will come and see things, may not say so much, but is concerned, but can't hear it. You know? So it means you have to really adopt a proper parenting style that will be able to work with your children as well. So during this time, you can enroll even into a school. You can go for therapy. You learn skills to know how to do the parenting so that you parent also mindfully. Remember, that's one of the lessons that people have learned during this time. Be mindful in your parenting. Your parenting
Actually,
consciously.
parenting has been such a challenge. I think one of the biggest challenge that parents have faced during this time. Getting back to the church, Apostle Joshua, you know, there are people, there are pastors in the religious sector that are so choosy. You know, they show favors to particular members because of their position and the things that they can do in the church. So those who give more, those who serve the church well, are usually closer to the pastor and to the man of God. Now this time, the government directive is that only a certain number of people come, you know, to the church physically to gather. I don't know how you are managing this, because there are also others who are so much in need, but they're not able to serve the church very well. As a father, as a pastor, how do you equally, you know, reach out to all your congregants without isolating some, or without isolating some people, thinking that these are better, these are not. These ones should come, because when they come, they will come with more offering. And the other ones, when they come with nothing. And the bills are here that need to be paid.
Wow, what a question. But I want to define that as the true church and the first church. In the true church of Christ, I do not believe a pastor or a lead person in the church should have preference to Silas above someone else or Francis, because Silas is bringing in dollars, Francis is bringing in shilling. That has become now no longer a church. You are now running a business. If you are of God and what God has called you to do is to speak his mind to his people, you will speak equally. It is not politics, but unfortunately, that is the state of the church at the moment, where people want to relate with certain people because of what they bring or what they can benefit from them. To me, to many of us, not only me, to many of us who are led by the Spirit, who are out there to do what God has called you to do, we have the mentality that he who has called you in the first place, the one who pays you. For example, if you work with Safaricom, you do not call the customer, or even when customer call the customer care, you don't tell them, pay my salary. Whether they call you, whether they don't call you, Safaricom is responsible for a salary. So if God truly calls you, you didn't call yourself, because there are many who have called themselves. Even Flash God called me. You know. So those ones who have called themselves, they operate in that direction. But if God called you, I believe you will depend solely on him without looking at one person higher than the other, or be in favor of one person. Sometimes at the family level, psychologists will agree that there is this preference for a certain child above a certain child. You just feel attached, or you love one particular child.
Yeah.
Maybe because he obeys you, or he greets you when he comes home, he plays with you, and you tend to like that child. Even in school, sir, you know, that this particular puppy is better than this one. But in the spiritual realm, you are to make all equal, because you are a shepherd, and as a shepherd over them, you don't say, this sheep, I'm not going to lead you. You lead all of them.
You lead all of them.
All of them.
You know, that is something that has actually happened during this time that people have been allowed to regather. There are those pastors that have chosen just a few. You can come, you can come, you can come, because they're so sure that when these ones come,
things
then,
we boast. That's why I said
Yes,
now, most
yes.
of people like that,
they've called themselves.
they have called themselves, or they are just after their own belly. There are people
What
after.
lesson
Yeah.
do you think the church needs to learn on such a thing? Because even those that have big wallets, some of them have died.
That's right.
Yes, some of them have relocated.
That's right.
Some of them have lost their jobs and they no longer have the big wallets anymore. Yes, what lesson has...
So generally, if we look at the lesson for COVID-19, you know, like I initially said, it has brought all of us to the stage of innovation. We have become very innovative. Especially, you know, late last year, or when this thing came up, the fashion industry were never thought, or would not have thought they could come up with, you know, creative mask. You see some people dressed, you know, some beautiful shapes. A fundi on the street who was just out there all this year doing mending of clothes or sewing clothes could not have thought of, so I could do a mask in an African way. You know, we were all depending on surgical mask and all of that. But when this happened, everyone, including church, we became creative, we became innovative. And I believe it has affected everything. Like Mr. Francis have said earlier on, the church, the schools have also embraced innovation. If I'm out of the classroom, does that mean I can't continue learning? No, because innovation is being able to move to the next level, you know, when doors are closed. How do I come out of this place if this is happening? And I believe even the government will go there. You see, like when I was coming, or when you sent me the message on the lessons, and I was pondering on innovation, I even foreseen a period where election can even be done without gathering people, not just church. If you want a free and fair election with the phone, 3 steps to fair and free election. Key in your fingerprint on your smartphone or with the phone you use, select your candidates, subscribe to the person you want to be your president. So we don't even necessarily have to gather people and say, okay, I want Francis to be my president, or I want Silas to be the president. Go on the app, select his name, and just vote. And there will be a data that will clearly indicate, because you can do it twice. Technology has moved on to that level because of innovation. So even with fingerprint, you can do that. Secondly, the church and all of us, we've been able to see ourselves as more of a spiritual being than the social being. You know, looking at the physical distance, other social distance, other lockdown, quarantine, stay at home. There were some of us that thought, if I was not in Garden City, I would die. But we are still here. So it tells the world that humans are more spiritual beings. And that has even made us to really look inward. You know, we've had more fellowship with the Creator. We have more reflection and meditation on, look, life is more than the physical world we live in, you know. So the lesson we've been able to grab from this is that we've seen ourselves just more than a physical or social being. And thirdly, if I say what other lesson we've been able to come up with, I've said about our gratitude. For me as a person, I've traveled and I felt, okay, being here again, still breathing, what a privilege, you know. And to buttress what Silas was saying earlier on about people now being able to take charge of themselves. I flew to western part of Kenya, and when I checked into a hotel, there was another man who was also lodging in there. And at the reception, there was a debate or kind of argument. where the man was saying, this COVID-19, he used the sanitizer, he rubbed his hand, then he was trying to teach the people to inhale. So one of the presidents said, why should you inhale sanitizer? The guy was saying, to build the immune for your lungs. The guy said, then you will die. So in a way, people have become health conscious than ever before.
Yes.
People have become. So I was like, I walked up there and I said, sir, hand sanitizer is for external use. Do not tell people to inhale sanitizer. How? How does that prevent you from contacting COVID and all of that? So the guy stood his ground and said, no, sanitizer is not for inhaling. Maybe before now, he doesn't even know what sanitizer is, but everybody is now personally health conscious of our environment, of ourselves. Everybody now is working on that path of, I know what to do to keep myself alive.
Wow.
So if we go on and on, 1001 lessons that COVID has brought, upon the world. So
true. Francis, when you listen to Apostle Joshua, actually one key lesson that I think for me has been is hygiene. You used to meet people and just shake hands, not caring where they have been, what they have touched, You just meet people and hug them. But nowadays, people are more conscious. We have done this over and over again.
Believe
it's not working.
you me,
COVID has been here. It has taught us these lessons, and it is time to change.
Believe you me, this information is readily available before the policy makers.
Who is standing on the way?
No, I can't speak for anyone. But what I'm trying to say is that this information is available. We only need to open ourselves and say, we can do things differently. We have begun even a new curriculum system, the CBC, because we want to do things, we want to come from this examination-oriented and passing-oriented, where we develop the whole person. So that's the same way we need to open up to new learning. So that people can learn comfortably. We currently in Kenya, we have what we are calling home learning.
Yes.
And I'm not sure whether the government has embraced it, where children can learn from home, sit an exam, and continue with life. So that way we are going to be able to mitigate any unforeseeable situations that interrupt learning at any particular level. And our children will appreciate that and progress, so that if it was like in 2020, those system was there, those who went through the online learning would move into the next level. And let me say this without any prejudice. It is a fallacy to believe that we can bring everybody to the same level. It will never happen. In life, we cannot bring everybody to the same level.
True.
It is not natural. It is not spiritual. We are different.
And that's the reason why we should also not confine our children to learn a particular thing for a whole year and then move to the next only after that 1 year. All of them together, knowing that they're so different. They're so different. You've put this person who is so slow and the other one who is such a genius in the same class, and you want them to go through this the whole year before they can transition. Betty, it is really unfair.
Betty, in 2020, we had a Form 3 boy in Migori who invented a radio in their village. Now you are telling that young man to go back to class and sit for another 2 years before he can get a certificate. And he has invented a radio. He is broadcasting. It doesn't matter. He may not be broadcasting what is really, but it shows you his intelligence is beyond being confined to geography, CLI, and all these things. A whole year. And yet, that young man can be taken, mentored, and nurtured, and put into a program that is going to bring him out as a technician. We have had all these things happening. The young boy who invented this wash and machine, the tank and it was a primary school children. We see, we honor them, but we take them back to the same place, and he is seated there, and the teacher is talking about many things, and this boy, his mind is not in class, because his mind is outside. Possibly he has seen another tank, and his mind is seeing what he can invent from. Why can't we harness this kind of intelligence?
I want to get to Silas and just look at the way in 2020 we exposed our children to gadgets, you know, because for those who were doing online, that was the only way to operate. And then parents did not know how to control them from getting into some sites. And as you know, Mr. Google also just pops up anything. And when they keep popping up anything, the children with their curiosity wants to quickly get there and find what did Dr. Google say, what does he have this time around. You know, it was okay and it was necessary to have these gadgets for online learning. But now as parents, you know, there are those parents who had learned that they need to delay technology as much as possible. What has changed? What lesson is now there for them after they're now getting back to school? The gadgets are still there. They have already learned and seen what they should not have seen in their age. What lesson do you have for the parents? What do they now need to do?
I think for parents, one of the things that I think is very essential is probably what I mentioned, creating rapport with the children, so that they are able sometimes to tell you how much they have been exposed. Some, if you have really a very good rapport, they will open up and share. But also at the same time, it's good to observe, so that if you see certain behaviors that are beyond developmental mileage, then you need to address that early enough. Okay. Now, regarding education online, it's also its own disadvantages. And one of the key things is the social skills are not developed as much. And so even if you're thinking to go online as parents, one of the key things that we need to factor in is, yes, we will have the online classes, and that focuses on the academic part. But how about the social part? So are we also bringing in another system that will be able to marry this other system of online, and so that together our children grow up as fully formed, not just forming them academically, but they can't live a social life. Because if a child is exposed to a gadget like a whole day, 24 hours, after class, after class, after lesson, after lesson, then it means they will have very little time to interact with real people. And so when they go out there and they want to go to the market to go and sell nyanya later on, or to go and do something else, they don't know how to have a conversation with you. It's just give, take, that's all it ends there. Some of them probably want to become journalists. And part of it is you need to really experience real life and see what people are going through. And maybe sometimes you bring also a bit of what you feel about these people when you're reporting. You know, that's why, for example, I noticed some of you who are very, very emotionally intelligent. When they are reporting about a very sad case, you can see in their face that what they are reporting actually is something serious. So children will not learn those facial expressions because they have been dealing with a machine. And so they do not know how to do that. And therefore it's key, if we have to roll whatever the program that we're going to do, maybe the virtual one, we need also to have another program. We need to consider the social part. And I think parents need to learn that also. Or if parents also can take their own initiative of exposing the children to a social platform. But however, what I would say is that the effect of using technology, and particularly now the phones and everything else, is something that we're going to grapple with for some times. It's something that we'll grapple with because they have been exposed to so much. Now, I know also the system that maybe there are softwares that are being used. There is also a way that you can use some softwares that are not able to connect with the normal, like Google and everything else. A specific, a kind of a parallel, that is actually able to, you can learn, and you only get to expose to the material that you're supposed to. Okay? But then that is a challenge because again, not every one of us who is able to do such a thing. So we need to consider those as parents and know that the effect of whatever has taken place, we need to find a way of addressing that. And one way is now bring the children to psychologists or having psychologists in school. They can come and give talks. And somehow children are able to see the effect of what it is that they have been through. And then from there they can seek help or speak to their parents. For example, sometimes we go to schools and talk of the effect of pornography on children. Initially they thought it's just something normal, it was fun. But then they realize it's actually impacting the way they look at the other person. They look at them as objects and not really like real people. And so once they know that, they start working on themselves. Or some other times, even spiritually, they are taught and they realize, so this thing affected me spiritually, or it is affecting my spiritual life. And so they are able to go back and find a way of getting help, maybe from a spiritual leader. I'm going through this, how can I be helped? But I can assure you, the effect of what has taken place right now is something that we're going to grapple with for quite some times.
Wow. I hope that Mr. Francis has noted that down and he's going to buy the idea of having psychologists in school. It's very important. You just never know how deep down those things have traveled, and it may also take a lot of time to make them out, as Silas has put it. I can only imagine how much exposed they have been to the gadgets all the 9 months and what they have seen there that they should not have seen. I want to allow you time, gentlemen, even as you wind up, to give us your parting shots, and I will start with you, Apostle.
All right, thank you very much once again. Basically, I want to touch on what Mr. Silas was talking about, because even as a church, as a pastor, our work is the teaching. It's just a spiritual school. So whether being in a class, we're all teachers. So I want to believe that what he was trying to hammer on should be re-emphasized on, that we should set up a system that help people to bring out what is inside of them. Because if you say education, these are educational people, experts. It is actually the word edudo, which is bringing from outside, inside out. But we have a set of system of education now that we want to bring from outside in. And that is why the system and the society is dysfunctional. If we have a younger who has invented a radio, go to some university and ask those who are in electronic engineering. They've not even done anything. So why bring in such a child to come and be in class 1 or class whatever? So I'm saying what he has said earlier on, that we should emphasize on bringing the best out of people educationally. And coming back to my friend being a psychologist, we should also see the need for, when he was talking about system of parenting, parents should also do their part. Because you give problem to teachers in school, you give problem to pastors in church if you fail to do play your role at work, at home. Because they say charities begin at home. So some of the dysfunctional kids we have in the society is because parents have failed. And that's why they are looking for a pastor to lay hand on them, to pour oil on their head. They're looking for a school that will discipline them. If as parents, we fulfill our part, I think the school will be a better place. The church will be a better place. So in a nutshell, let's all run back to God. I was listening to a story that was told by a man, a white guy yesterday, and he was saying an old man, had a very big home full of art gallery and all of that. Very rich man, had a son. And the son was just so playful that the guy one time drew something, and when the old man died, he left a will and said to the lawyer, I'm going to auction my property, but anyone who takes the painting of my son will inherit everything. So rich people came into the house of this rich man ready for, auctioning and all of that. And the first auction was the rough painting of the son. And they brought it out. This is going for auctioning, for bidding. Nobody was willing, except for one old man there. Said, okay, I want it. For how much? Let's say for 5 shillings. And the man took it. Then they just said, this is the conclusion. The will of this rich man is that anyone who takes the painting of my son gets everything in this house.
Wow.
So in a nutshell, let's run back to the son, Christ Jesus. In this pandemic, in this period of fear, a lockdown, stay at home, social distance, let's run back to the son. If we go back to the son, Christ Jesus, our educational, our tourism, our politics, everything will be all right.
Wow. I hope you got it. Mr. Francis.
What I would say is that first, schools we have resumed to continue with learning. But as we look back to the year 2020 and the challenges that we have gone through in terms of our education, in terms of those who learn institution and even the workers in the institution, I believe we need to begin a conversation with the mindset of what if we found ourselves here again? Mm-hmm. Are we going to be losers, or are we going to have learned our lessons and come up with means and ways on how we can go around such challenges like the challenges we have right now? Mm. But I want to believe that any school which has come through to this season is going to thrive.
Wow. True. I believe too. Silas, your parting shot.
What I'll say is that your mental well-being is your responsibility. You cannot leave that to the government. You cannot leave that to your pastor. You cannot leave that to any other person. It is your responsibility. So it means if the environment is not favorable, realize that you can't change the environment. You can only change yourself, how you perceive and how you interpret that environment. That is the most important thing. As you also work on other skills, for example, it's going to really invest fully on relationships. Like be there, present, and invest in that relationship. Because when everything else has failed, one thing that has taken us through this is relationships, particularly the significant people. There are some, those who are contracting COVID, the only people who could walk with them, visit them, talk to them are on the close people. So enhance those relationships, invest in them. Number two, it is important also to strengthen your support system. Your friends, call them, talk to them. Let your friends also reach out and talk to you. That is important to be able to go through this. Number three, I would say when you get to a point and you realize you're not able to move on, your significant other cannot help you. Maybe they don't have the skills. They're incapacitated because of certain, whatever it is that they are going through. Please talk to psychologists. They are able to work with you. They are very professional people, and also at the same time, they are neutral. In that they are not going to judge you, they are going to take you the way you are and work with you and support you. So if you do that, you'll be at a better place. Wow. Find better ways of coping. Do not use chemicals, substance, weed, and the rest. If you use that, it means your system will depend on them. And every time you have something that is bothering you, the mind will always shift to the chemical. Other than learning skills that can enable you transition, be resilient, overcome whatever you're going through, when you go to the chemical, then the brain will always connect stress and chemical. So every time there's stress, there is chemical. More stress, more chemical. And so finally that breaks you down. However, if you can take this opportunity to learn and say, for example, I'm going through, I'm grappling with mental issues like depression, stress, and all that, I am going to learn the way out, which is learning a number of skills, reinforcing, for example, like a number of factors that I've mentioned. Spiritual perspective also is key in resilience. Because with spirituality, what happens is that when, particularly those people believe in all-powerful God. So what happens is that when everybody else has hit the ceiling, because they focus on their resources, and their resources are limited, those who have believe in God who is all-powerful, what they do is they go beyond their own limitation. And therefore, other than being stressed up when there is uncertainty, for them they have more hope and know that things will be better. And that way then, it empowers them. So spirituality is key. Also work on that, invest in that, and I believe we'll be able to get to a better place. For those who probably have found themselves in the very maladaptive way, for example, they have used a lot of chemical, they are addicted, please seek help. Those children who have pregnancies or they have become fathers at a very early age, seek help also so that you can be supported and you become a better person. Having a little baby at the age of 13, I don't think that's the end of life. You know, you can still move on with your life. Yet, you may be more responsible than a 13-year-old, your counterpart, but at the same time, that does not mean your life ends there. So you can get support and achieve whatever it is you want them to achieve. Okay. Thank you, and I wish you well.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. You have been of very great help. You have very, very resourceful. And I know for sure that those who have been watching this and listening to you guys have gotten a lot of stuff home. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing that for us. Thank you also, viewer, for being here to watch this episode. It has really been a lovely time. I hope you have taken home the COVID-19 lessons that we have had in 2020, as you're getting into 2021, where we already are. I hope that these lessons can take you through. For those who are still stagnated and not knowing what to do, you have taken notes and you now know that you are a better person. Your identity is still the same. If you change anything that you are doing, that's fine. But at least you have taken lessons and you have taken notes of what you need to do. My name is Betty. I have been your host. See you next time.
Theology schools were established to prepare people to preach the clear gospel of Jesus Christ. They were designed to teach the truths of the